Hello, this is part two and the last part in a series of videos on how to do research to see what is going on with progressions, solar arc directions, as well as transits during an event. And in part one, we looked at accidents, and now we're going to see how we can test how good our theory is. And I'm going to show you how we test it in two steps. The first step I started to show you at the end of the previous video. Let me pick up with that again and then show you the final step if you take this all the way to a complete quantitative assessment. Okay, how do we test how good our formula is? First thing is to use data visualization to see what it looks like. Data visualization is a huge deal in modern research methods. We look to see what things look like. It's often more important than looking at a bunch of little numbers. So here's what we do to get a good data visualization of what's going on. And then in the final step, we do a statistical test, and it really shows exactly how good it is. But first, the data visualization. What we do is we take the people who had the accidents, for example, Jacqueline Aim, and we go to forecast, and we produce a forecast for her just to get the data visualization. This is not the final absolute quantitative evaluation, but it's an important step along the way. We go to astrosignature forecast. We select main forecast astrosignatures, and I've created an astrosignature. I called it tutorial video accident formula. And if we look at it, we go to customize and select the transit-to-natal. We will see that the only thing in here is transiting Mars conjunct the natal Sun-Uranus midpoint. And here are the details. Mars in the transit chart, Sun-Uranus in the natal chart. Angle 0 degrees means conjunction. I put in a 1.5 degree orb because that's often what we use for midpoints, and arbitrarily just give it 10 points. I often just give things 10 points. It's good to give it a value bigger than 1, so it shows the range as it gets more exact. So there it is. That is the transit that we saw that occurred in one of the two people. I think that was the one that occurred for Evangeline Adams. One was the transit that occurred for one person, and the other was in the progressed and solar arc. And there they are. The progressed Mars, conjunct natal Saturn-Uranus midpoint, and the second one is the progressed Mars-Uranus midpoint opposition natal Saturn. Now, to get a visualization, to get a feeling for how well this works, what we do is we'll run this forecast I'm going to get out of this area of this program where we see the details, and I'm going to select transit-to-natal, progressed-to-natal, and solar arc-to-natal, because our theory, or let's say what we noticed is that there was a transit-to-natal, there was a progressed-to-natal, and there was a solar arc-to-natal. Let me show you from the first video. Let's go back to this screen, for example. Well, this one's fine. This one, these were the three things we saw. A transit-to-natal in Evangeline Adams, that was a transiting Mars conjunct natal Sun-Uranus, and for Jacqueline Aim, we saw a progressed Mars conjunct natal Saturn-Uranus, and in her solar arc, we saw progressed Mars-Uranus opposition natal Saturn. Those are the three things we saw. So now what we're going to do, let me get back here. Now what we're going to do is we're going to run an astrosignature we're right here, for Jacqueline Aim. We're going to run it for the first half of 2007. And the accident occurred on May 6th, and we'll see what the graph looks like. And as I mentioned here, we're going to put in our astrosignature, as we saw, are only those three midpoints, right? I'll show it to you again real quick. Transit-to-natal, there it is. Transiting Mars, conjunct natal Sun-Uranus, and over here under progressed-to-natal, There are the two. One of them showed up in secondary progressed-to-natal. The other showed up in solar arc-to-natal. There they are. And I will run it for the first half of 2007, January 1st, 2007 to July 1st, 2007. I think I've set everything up correctly. I select those three things because we did not find progress to progress. We did not find transit to progress. So the theory we're developing, this is kind of artificial. I mean, you would be adding it, you would be analyzing at least 10, 20, 30, hopefully even more charts with actual accidents, analyzing it carefully, looking it over, making a consistent formula. So if you have conjunctions, you'd probably include oppositions. You build something that looks good. Here, I'm just putting in the three things that I saw just to visualize what happens. And I will run it. So now I'm getting a visualization of what this is going to look like. You see, it takes a while to run. So this part of the program where you actually produce a forecast for people, it's fairly slow, you could say. It's going to take a little while to run the 6 months. Maybe it'll take 10 or 15 seconds to run it. And once we perfect this, this is also what you would use. You could provide this to people. Provide this graph showing when they're accident prone. And it could be supported by actual research data. And there it is. This is for, this is the one for Jacqueline Aim, right? This is for Jacqueline Aim. And you see this slowly going up. These are probably the progressed and solar arc. And this is probably a quick transit thing happening. Let me drag this up into the area that I'm capturing for the video. There, now you can see all this. I'm only capturing part of my screen. This is probably that transit that we included in the formula. So we're getting a visualization, and her accident was on, what did I say? Her accident was on May 6th, 2007. So over here, I'll drag this into the part of this my screen where we're that I've captured. If I go down to May 6th, 2007, there it is, May 6th, 2007. Now that font may be a little bit small. What I'm going to do, I'm going to copy and paste it into Notepad with a larger font, and you can see it more clearly. And it's showing that the progressed Mars conjunct the natal Saturn-Uranus midpoint with a 53-minute orb, and solar arc Mars-Uranus midpoint opposite natal Saturn with 11-minute orb. It's just showing that this actually works. It's showing the same exact thing that we saw in part 1 of this video when we did the midpoint compatibility, when we ran the one-day event research to find these things. And now we see that we can produce this graph for an individual. There it is. So once our forecast works well, we could give this graph to people, and also we can use it to improve our formula. We're noticing that this transit is happening in, it looks like late April. If I go up to late April, up around here, around April 26th, we will see, I'm scrolling up to April 26th, I'm here, and transit to natal, where are you? Transit to natal in late March, I'm sorry, late March. Here it is, peaking, this is March 23rd. So in late March, we will see the transit happening. Okay, I'm here, March 27th, there it is, transiting Mars, conjunct natal Sun-Uranus midpoint, right in this time period. So just as an example, I'll copy and paste this into the Notepad with the larger font. Let me separate it with these dashes so you can read it. And what it's saying, excuse me, is that transiting Mars, conjunct the natal Sun-Uranus midpoint On March 27th was a 1 degree 7 minute orb. And on March 26th, it has only a 21 minute orb. So right around March 25th, 26th. Anyway, sorry. This transit is happening not when there was an accident. But if we go back here, and I can stay right in the screen, which is very cool, and select Evangeline Adams, her accident was in 2004. Boy, I need to drink some water. Sorry. Okay, hopefully that's better. And let's run her forecast for the first half of 2004. Begin the analysis. And while that's running, let me confirm that for Evangeline Adams, it was February 3rd, 2004 was the accident, actually hypothetical accident. Sorry, I just made up that date. So hers was the transit-to-natal. If you remember right, we found the transit Mars, conjunct Sun Uranus for her, and we will confirm it and see the graph coming up. Here it comes. And there it is. This is February 1st. We see the peak. Over here are the details. I can click this box, which removes everything with a score of 0, which is rather handy. And now I see the transits began on January 31st, transiting Mars, conjunct Sun Uranus, using the 1.5 degree orb, started on January 31st, ended on February 4th. So there it is, right at the time. Now her accident was at 4:06 GMT on February 3rd. Here it's showing an orb of 10 minutes because it's doing it at 12 noon. What the program does is it does a calculation once a day and shows the strength once a day. Well, that's good enough. We see that the Mars-Uranus is lined up, picking out February 3rd when the accident is. Just as a technical detail, if I put in 4:06 GMT and click on this apply and recalculate, it will come up with the same exact orb because now I'm calculating once a day at 4:06 GMT, which was the time of the accident. And what we had found was a 35-minute orb, transiting Mars, conjunct Sun Uranus midpoint with a 35-minute orb. And now, because I'm doing the calculation for 4:06, 4 hours, 6 minutes GMT, it will come up with the same exact result. So this is a technical detail, a subtle point that these calculations are done once a day at a certain time of day. Default is 12 noon GMT. I can change it, and when I change it to the time of the accident, then it will show that on February 3rd, there it is. There it is. Perfect match. I will copy and paste this over here so that it's in a larger font so you can read it more easily. 35-minute orb. Just showing that technically, getting down to the fine details, the program is working perfectly. It's showing exactly what we saw when we looked at it in part 1 of this 2-part series. We did the midpoint compatibility. We saw it was a 35-minute orb. We did the 1-day event research to find these things going on. It showed a 35-minute orb. And we can run an individual forecast, and it confirms it. So there you see a graph for an individual. And I often use these individual forecasts to improve the formula. Because if you get a false positive, meaning the graph goes up on a date when an accident didn't occur, I look to see what the transits were that predicted it and maybe lower the points or remove some of them and see if now it works better for everyone. If you've got 100 people and you change the formula, then all 100 forecasts are going to change. So you change it and you get false positives, which means the graph goes up when there isn't an accident, and false negatives, which is what we have here, um, where oh no, we don't have any false negatives. This forecast is actually perfect. There's her accident February 3rd. It's the only date that's strong, so it works perfect. When we did Jacqueline Ames, we had a false positive. We had a peak on a date where there was no accident. So anyway, you can get peaks when there's no accident, or there is an accident and it doesn't show it. That's like a false negative. You said there wouldn't be an accident, but there was. And you can individually adjust and see what's going on when you didn't get it right for somebody. So that's how you can test against each individual, produce the actual graph with the astrosignature forecast based on your discoveries. Last thing I want to show you is this. How, let's see, I've already shown you this, how you can do a completely scientific, detailed statistical analysis to see exactly how good your forecast is. Here's what you would do. If you took your research to like the end, this would be like a historical discovery. You'll go down in history books for discovering that astrology really works. Here's what you would do. You go back, first of all, you take all the people that are in the accidents, like Evangeline Adams and so on, and you go into the, let me just clear all entries. Am I going to need all this? No, I better not clear it. Let me just add. You go in here and you, well, she's already here, actually. Let's just go to Evangeline Adams, natal chart. There she is. She's the first one. And I would change her category. Instead of astrologers, I go down here and I select a category for her. No, I go down here. Where am I going? Select a category, the first menu item. Select a category for this chart. Go over here to My Data. There's a little cool thing here, show number of charts. And then I go down to something that I haven't used, like here, and it confirms there are 0 charts. I give it a name. I could say My Accident Data. I can type it in here, My Accident Data, and update. And now I assign Evangeline Adams to this category. I'm not going to do it because I want to leave her as astrologers, but I would assign it and it would change her. And I take all of my accident data people and I put them in their own category. That's the first thing that I do, because now I've got them as their own isolated group. And then you go into this research feature, you go into research, and you go down here to make control group. Let me show that to you again. Make data for stat software or control group. Go to the bottom and select create a control group. Create a control group and put it in my category in Sirius database. And what you do is now you go over here and you select this category that you made with the My Accident Data. You select this, where you've put all of your accident charts, and then you select a control group, which could be, this one down here. I can make sure there are no charts in there already. There are 0 charts, and I can call this My Accident Data Control Group and update it and click OK. Now, if I say create the control group, it's going to take all of your charts, create a control group, and put them in this category. Now you have what's called a shuffled control group, which is a beautiful, wonderful thing. I talk about it in other videos. It's just a great thing to have. And now you can go back to the forecast research for one day and run the analysis for the actual group. If I go over here, here's the actual one. And then I run it again for the shuffled group. And I would put them in their own group. And then I run it and then I save the results with this button. And then I can run the t-test, which is available here as well. I'm not going to walk you through all that because I don't know if anybody's going to get to this point in their research. But basically, I'm letting you know that you could then compare against a control group to see how well this whole formula is working, including the progressions. It can be done. I don't want to spend a lot of time on this, but just to give you an idea that it can be done. It's a little bit tedious, but it's possible to do this research all the way to the end. So the conclusion that I wanted to share with you is that you can do sophisticated research using transits and progressions. And you don't need to take it all the way to the end. I mean, just by seeing what's going on with the progressions and transits, you can see what's going on. You can see if it makes sense. You can pull out the ones that you think make sense and build your own forecast and produce a graph for people. That alone is amazing. See what's actually going on, built on actual observations, and produce a forecast. You could collect more data, test it again and see what's going on, and have these forecasts based on actual research. And it could be taken all the way to the end where you do the statistical test to see how well it's working. Let me say one last thing. When people do research of a similar nature in genetics or other fields in academia, there are dozens of people within the university, professors, graduate students working on their PhD dissertation, and there are hundreds and sometimes thousands of colleges and universities. People are networked together, huge undertakings to figure out what the genetic codes are, genetic markers for problems. You, by yourself, doing this research, maybe with a little bit of help, you're a subscriber to Astrology DC, you can ask some questions once a month. We have such limited resources, just a handful of us on our own poking around. So I just want to encourage you to don't feel too overwhelmed. It is overwhelming. You're just one person with a few people helping you. Normally this research requires huge teams of people all working together. They're even getting paid to do this research, as well as teach and so on. So, we have incredibly good software tools considering that we're such a small, specialized group of people pursuing this research with whatever time we can find to do it. So, there's a lot here, but you're like a one-man band, doing it all yourself. Well, I'm here to help you, and there's other people, and if you're part of the Astrology DC subscribers, we have a support group and so on to help. We have the Vibrational Astrology conferences once a year. So we do have a small community that's building, working on these things together and making information like this to help. But again, my point is, this is normally done by very large teams of people with lots of time, a lot of commitment and focusing and specializing in it. And we're doing quite well considering our limited resources to do these kinds of research. So there it is, my friends. That's how you can do research on any kind of event. I used accidents as an example, using progressed-to-natal, progress-to-progress, transit-to-progress, solar arc, transit-to-natal. All these things can be looked at and examined, and you could spend your whole life easily just studying one area and pouring through all these things, putting it together, and ultimately it could even lead to a statistical evaluation that would be of historical significance if you found something. I mean, it would be like an enormous breakthrough. So there it is. A lot of tools. They're not perfect. Nothing's perfect. But I think it will help a lot of people doing this kind of research and development. And also, it's not just research, it's product development, where you can produce graphs for people for the likelihood of events, based on actual data, that not at least there's some support for it rather than just personal experience. Okay, my friends, I hope that's helpful. Thank you very much. God bless. Namaste.